accepted. So we're talking here today about accessibility across, can't even talk today, accessibility efforts across open source projects. And we have representatives here from 3 different open source projects. For those who are not aware, accessibility, or at least digital accessibility, is about making sure that software can be used by people regardless of various abilities, visual ability, motor ability, hearing ability, and so forth. And it's something that is not just the ethically correct thing to do and the smart thing to do because you don't want your software not to be used by any portion of the population. It's also legally required just about everywhere at this point. So what we're going to be talking about today is sort of some of the practicalities of how we can make our products accessible, how we can, of course, accessibility is part of what you build in when you develop something, but like any other sort of bug, accessibility bugs can turn up. So the questions involve how we can discover the gaps that we have in our products, how we can address them, and then how we can prove to the world in necessary ways that we have addressed them. And then how can we work together, if at all, to maybe work with network effects and make these things work a little better overall. So first, maybe let's just do a round of quick introductions. My name is Maccabee Levine. I'm at Lehigh University, and I am in various ways affiliated with all 3 of the projects that my colleagues here are involved in. So let me just hand the microphone down and we can do the who are you and what project are you representing?
Hello, I'm Nick Bannett. I am a resource sharing manager at Minitex. Minitex is a service agency housed at the University of Minnesota Libraries. I'm here representing ReShare, and I'm looking forward to answering these questions.
Hello, my name is John Coburn, and I work for EBSCO, and I'm here representing the FOLIO project.
And I'm Chris Hallberg. I've been with the VuFind project for 14 years, and I'll be the front-end spokesperson today.
All right, the game of pass the microphone is working so far. So first, the discovery issue. We'll go down the line. I guess, Chris, I may start with you and say, how does your project discover accessibility compliance issues? Is it just ad hoc, or is there any formal auditing that happens? If so, by who, or any coordination within the project, that sort of thing?
Excellent question. I would say for VuFind, it's mostly ad hoc, that we tend to discover accessibility issues as they come up in different pull requests. But we have been very lucky to have some large reports be shared by the community, like the Moravian Library, which shared their report, and the University of Colorado also shared large reports with us, and that really helps. But mostly it's what people report to JIRA, our issue tracking service, and also whenever new development is happening that messes with the view at all, we tend to use that as an opportunity to look for more opportunities. But as far as formal auditing goes, we've actually been having discussion about making it more formal. We had a discussion at the last project management committee meeting about creating what I think we didn't call it a special interest group, but that's kind of been the word that's been lodged in my head today after the conference for accessibility, to try to make this more formal, make the testing, make sure that when we do have questions about accessibility, that we have a definitive answer for those questions about how to go forward, because that does tend to mire some of the responses there. And I think that's all the parts.
Yeah,
I can talk a bit more if we have more time at the end, but I don't want to pass down the mic.
As far as discovering accessibility issues, there's a couple of layers that go into FOLIO. So our first layer that all of our developers, all of our various modules have implemented is some automated testing. So an automated testing layer, both with Axe and the Chrome browser plugin and through automated tests. So on the unit tests on those modules, they'll run Axe. Now it is automated testing, which I think a lot of us are kind of familiar with. It's just a static analysis kind of tool. It catches, a relatively low percentage of things, but it does catch, and it will keep you from stubbing your toe in really painfully obvious kind of ways. So it helps you out there. And on top of that, we do get audit feedback, similar to what Chris mentioned. We've gotten feedback reports from CU Boulder. They've been great to help us out with their accessibility lab. They were one of the earliest jumping on board to help us do that. And then we've gotten reports from Michigan State as well. And then, on top of that, there is stuff we find in usage. And we'll get reports from customers that let us know, hey, there's this. So we get in there, triage.
So ReShare is a very new community, and as that, Minitex adopted the ReShare platform a little over a year ago, and that was around May 1st of 2024. And so at that point, I joined onto the product committee and was starting to learn more about the work of the product community within the ReShare community. One of the things that came out of the product community shortly, or right around that same time that I was joining, is that there was a position paper written by a few individuals to kind of focus the need for accessibility planning and looking into the accessibility issues around ReShare. So Minitex also, as part of the University of Minnesota has its own accessibility labs as well. And we are very lucky to have access to a number of tools that they provide free to all of the University of Minnesota departments. We will be conducting our own testing and we've committed to provide those reports to our host vendor, which is Index Data. So some additional work that needs to go in before we get to that point, though, is, as I said, with the new community, we've been more focused on implementations. Well, now that we're through a number of big implementations, we need to make sure that everybody is on the same version, make sure that before we get to the point of being able to test these. So we have an in-house a unit or a working group at Minitex where we are reviewing all of our services, and we've been working on this for several months now. Our web developer has experience in this, as well as he has provided reports on some of his own websites for us, but we're just kind of waiting for this additional work to make sure that we're on the right version that's going to be kind of make sure that everybody's on a uniform platform.
Thank you. So yeah, it seems like we have some different approaches there and different sort of levels of maturity as the project has advanced. Kate in chat, I see, brings up the really important point that it's only about a third of the WCAG or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines criteria can even be automatically tested, at least in 2.1. So figuring out processes for how we can manually review these things as well, and who's doing that and what groups, becomes really important. So let me move, and we certainly will have plenty of time for questions and additional detail on all this stuff after the questions. But let's maybe going in the other direction. Once we've discovered some accessibility gaps, who does the remediation work on the project? How is that determined? And how, sometimes on a project there can be tension, or some stakeholders are not as aware of the necessity of dealing with accessibility concerns and other technical debt and so forth. So who's doing that remediation, and how does the project balance remediating accessibility issues and other project issues?
Thank you. And so as I mentioned, Index Data is our service host vendor for our ReShare implementation at Minitex. And we have committed, we've set aside some money to commit to any remediation work that we feel is high priority. Now, exactly what that's going to be and whether this is enough money to deal with that, we don't know yet, because we need to get to that point where we're actually doing our testing and reviewing this. But we're hoping that some of that can bring along the community as well, and find potentially some other participants who are interested in funding some of that work.
So remediation for us on FOLIO, well, FOLIO is a project that sort of umbrellas over a number of different teams. So when we have an issue come up, the first thing we kind of have to do is have to see who to route it to. So if it's a centralized issue, which means it'll probably be showing up everywhere across all the UI modules in FOLIO, it's going to be, most likely it's a stripes issue. So that ends up coming to my team, probably to me, so I'll take that on and we'll solve it at the centralized level. And kind of the nice thing about being all component based as we are is we can solve issues in one place, like with a particular component, and that'll solve it everywhere. So really nice thing, nice benefit to the architecture. If it is something with maybe some of the glue code or something that's in one of the UI modules, we'll usually send it out to that team, or I'll reach out to them too, and probably do a little bit of consultation if they don't know exactly how to fix it, or maybe they're just not exactly sure how to make it work. I'll collaborate with other developers to try and get things solved in the best way.
I think we're really lucky with the active community at VuFind is that often when we find out there's an issue, it's attached to a pull request to fix that issue. And I'm really grateful for that. I think in that way, it kind of shows that for VuFind, it's thinking more of the how do you prioritize these things, that accessibility has always been a priority. And sometimes, as you alluded to earlier, sometimes those priorities are thrust upon us with the EU compliance deadline just passed in June, and the US's compliance for at least single A is in April. And I know that my colleague Dave Uspel and I are working hard to make sure that that's happening. But going back to what John said, not now, but at his talk earlier this morning, I really like what he said about problems first, and then you can worry about. I put lemon later from my notes. And I think that's really kind of how it goes. Is that if there's a problem, we obviously want to fix that first. But the ongoing UI upgrades kind of tend to be long-lasting pull requests that receive a lot of comments and a lot of feedback, and then we find a good place to finally finalize them for a large when we do a major release.
Thank you. I'm gonna insert a part A here of that question. Chris alluded briefly to one of the efforts in the VuFind community right now that we deal with when we've identified a problem where something is not compliant, but we're not sure what the right solution is, because there may be conflicts between what fits the letter of WCAG, rules versus what, for example, a screen reader user might prefer in terms of verbosity of output or things like that, just as an example, or the how much alt text or to use for something in terms of the verbosity or to explain it fully versus the utility for someone hearing it. And so we face an issue with how to resolve some of those issues, and who do we go to for expertise and request their time. I'm curious, thoughts on that process. Who are the go-to experts within the project or elsewhere or outside it, if anything, that are helpful to resolve some of the challenges of how to solve a problem?
That's a question. Within ReShare, as I said, a lot of this is starting with the product team, the product committee, and that position paper that was originally started by Maccabee here, and he has legitimate concerns and really is a good voice on this this issue. He brought it, forward with a couple of other committee members, James Robinson and Alan Jones, and to produce this document to keep us focused. And like I said, as some of this comes through the product committee, we've also been getting our house in order to produce a roadmap, which will sort of lay out some of these priorities that are important to focus on in the near term as well as over the coming year. And accessibility is one of those important things, as well as some issues related to some backlog of tech debt and bug fixes.
So whenever we went through question one, we talked about resources and that. There actually is a big, I guess it's relatively recent to me on the EBSCO side. EBSCO has an internal team too that does accessibility work. And they've been a really fantastic resource. They do have an individual working with them who he has a sight disability and he uses a screen reader on the regular, and so he is always has availability for us to run things by him, see what his expectations are under certain situations, and also try out components. So he'll go through and I'll, just hit him up. He's a great guy to work with. His name's Cody Kerr, fantastic individual. Just big shout out to him. He can help be that solid dividing factor. And I wish that everybody else in the open source community did have access to actually somebody like him. And if you find him, keep him, right? So, I mean, and as far as, I don't know, I guess prioritizing things and tailing on to what Chris sort of said at the end of his last answer, a lot of the issues we come through that come through, they're not really huge, big things. If you're talking about like a lot of times it's mislabeling something or just something's missing in that aspect of the accessibility. That's a relatively small change for a developer to make, and they can knock that right out versus your much larger like feature changes. I mean, our devs might need a break from those huge feature changes, right? And so they're like, a string, heck yeah, done, right? PR. So
I think that touches briefly on a good point is that the number one compliance issue we get from the site improve records that Villanova provides for us is image alt text and missing things like that. So it's not only just on the developers, there's also a certain level of standard that the people who are doing the cataloging need to hold to, because there's a lot of incoming data that's not going to be perfectly massaged. So it's a big collaboration across the whole library. But I'm really glad now, because one of my faults is ability to remember names. So I'm glad I wrote down some of the names of some of the people that we do turn to really regularly that make big contributions. In particular, lately, Kate DeBell from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine has been in the Slack very active, has kind of become one of the buck stops here question answerers about accessibility. I also want to give a big thank you and shout out to the National Library of Finland team, Ere Majala. I hope I got that right, Ere, and some work that some of his people did there. Aleski Peebles and Miko Yamea. I apologize for any mispronunciations. There's also another person here who's been very instrumental, Maccabee. I'm not even going to try the last name. No, but we're really grateful that there's been a lot of people. And when it is coming time, when the idea of putting together the accessibility special interest group or what have you, named to come later, I think there was immediately a bunch of people, like some of the ones I mentioned, that were immediate, that came to mind for people who would be on that. But then people wanted to pull in a larger community, and I was sad to see for the special interest group, kind of like slideshow that they did, where it said accessibility. What was the exact? It was dormant.
yeah.
That was like, so if anyone from that that interest group is interested, we know that we can find you on the Slack. Thank you. And feel free to hop back on the VuFind side of the Slack as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Kate Dybel, for the pronunciation. I'm used to saying metageeky, that's just easier to say for Kate. When, as a project, when we've ideally discovered and remediated as many as we're aware of issues, then it's often a question of how do we publicize that, because some of the stakeholders looking to adopt our software want to see proof that we're accessible, which is a good thing. Thank goodness they do. And so one of the ways to do that is a VPAT, which is a voluntary product accessibility template. I think I got that right. Certification? Yeah, right. Okay. Does your project produce a VPAT or similar certification? And how do you work towards producing that? And once produced, how do you work towards keeping it current?
We just made a VPAT last year, and it was last updated this January. So I think we still need to work on the timeline for when it gets updated. But yeah, that was a manual process of, I was like, oh, I found a really great tool, the US Section 508, it helps you fill it out. But basically it was just, here is every single WCAG requirement. Do you match it? Yes or no? Leave notes. So I don't think you necessarily need a special tool for it. I'm not sure. Back to what Kate Dybel and John were saying about like the automation of it. It's kind of something you just have to kind of dive in and go for it. Having had that report in hand, I think we took an important, better step was to put it on the wiki and make it editable wiki markdown in HTML, which makes it way easier to update than doing that whole form again. So we do have that form, and we're still, I think, figuring out exactly when we update it. If we're aware of a big accessibility change, I think we try to look at it and make sure. But when I filled it out, I wanted to make sure that any flaws that I'm aware of in VuFind, of where we don't cover things, that is called out with perhaps a link to some other resource like Universal Viewer that could help with things like audio and visual that VuFind is not built for.
So there's two different layers, I think, of these sort of certifications documents that we have with Folio. And one is an accessibility page on the wiki that describes some of the accessibility practices that go into Folio. They describe our level of compliance, and they even have a link out to Jira with a dashboard with a lot of our accessibility issues, some that are open, so you can kind of see and you can sort of track things that way. I'll be honest, I don't really look at that list very often myself, and I don't know. Jira is it can be strange with its reporting, how it tells you things, but a lot of stuff is just in the spirit, I guess, of transparency, what the current state of things is. There are ways that people can get those, and as far as VPAT goes, I mean, EBSCO, they sell a lot of different products and everything, and a lot of their, all their customers are interested in seeing VPATs. So if a potential customer asks for a VPAT, they send them one, and we do go through and update it. There was a few months ago, I think we went through EBSCO's for Folio and just took a look, see what needed updating there, if it was timelines or what that needed to be updated there. If there was a particular issue that was linked in that document, we would make sure that's up to date. And so everything is kind of connected, I think, on the Folio VPAT and status of our overall accessibility side, right? So it seems like a pretty good setup. I'm always open for other ideas, for people to have for that.
So as I mentioned earlier, the ReShare community is still fairly young, and it's a very limited size still. We want to expand, obviously, like any open source software, and be adopted more widely. But at this time, as I was saying earlier, we were kind of dealing with some issues to get our house in order to organizationally to make sure that we had a roadmap move this project forward in a way that made sense. Some of that was about baking in some of these ideas about continually paying attention to the accessibility instead of just some of the time. It's an all the time issue, paying attention to what the accessibility issue is rather than just being driven by, oh, this is our deadline, we've got to meet this one deadline, and that's a bad way to think if you're just waiting for that thing and then you're trying to play catch up. So we're looking at our options. What is the community really asking for? I've had my own member libraries within my Minitex community asking, do we provide a VPAT for our service? And no, we don't at this time. We could potentially in time, but at this point, we're still kind of evaluating our options to determine what is the best way to spend our dollars for the biggest effect. And so, as I said, we're doing our own in-house at Minitex. There may be other institutions who will do their own reviews as well. And I did see the comment here about the roughly 35%, cannot be tested via automation. And that was one of the things that my web developer pointed out, is that the way ReShare works as an app, is that, it doesn't have the ability to, our tool with PopeTech doesn't have the ability to crawl the website. So he has strategies for dealing with that and determining what are sample pages and a number of sample pages to review them and determine, and then get a final report, which we can then produce and provide to our vendor.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, we're at different stages of that process as well. And it's interesting hearing some of the differences between, like, we have a VPAT that we update all the time and we're still working on it, and we just did our first one, right? We're all 3 stages of that life cycle. So the last formal question that I want to ask, and then we definitely want to open this up and have some conversation and questions, and I would especially like to hear some ideas from everybody on this last question, is collaboration opportunities here. Given we're at 3 different stages of this, maturity level perhaps of this process, are there opportunities and benefits to collaboration across these projects? So certainly knowledge sharing, I think we can all agree that's helpful, right? I'm wondering, and are there ways that we can even encourage that knowledge sharing and, more often than just sitting here, at WOLFcon, can we make that more continuous? But also, are there opportunities for literal collaboration, ways we can, assist each other or get assistance from each other in some of these steps? Either directly, and also, given that we're all 3 Open Library Foundation projects, is there a role at all for OLF to play, in supporting us in any of these efforts? So let me start with the newest project and what we might need on that front or want.
Thank you. And I do think that there are opportunities. As a ReShare user in our implementation, we use VuFind as our end user discovery, as well as managing that end user experience. And so Index Data has just informed me on my last workday before I came to this conference that they are actually focusing on a time frame, and they gave me some specifics, which I'm not going to repeat because it's not set in stone yet. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation with them once I get back into the office. But that's the thing. We've been told that 10.2 is the most accessible version. It's the most solid, stable version, and that's the one that has the VPAT, as I understand it, Chris? Yeah. So we do think that there is some things that we can work on together. What could the Open Library Foundation do? One thing that I mentioned was money. We are looking at our resources, how we can utilize our resources to the best effect. Does the Open Library Foundation have ideas on how we could go about fundraising for our small community to potentially deal with some of these developments? Because right now, as everybody who is a United States user is aware, at Minitex, we are a large user of the LSTA grants. Those may very well be going away soon, unfortunately. But, that's the thing. How are we going to make up some of that funding? That's one thing that we're thinking about. How can we, do things like that?
Collaboration, for sure. And I really liked hearing what Chris said a little bit earlier about spinning up the accessibility SIG, getting that back into gear. Would love to be on board with that. For sure within the Folio community, I know we have more interested parties in doing that across our projects and across Folio and all the modules and everything. As far as the OLF, I'm not sure if they provide a specific like a document that may state some kind of criteria that they particularly hold. As we get maybe more open source projects involved, something to let other projects know what they need to adhere to, and so that they're to sort of ease it so that we're not just learning on our own when we're stepping into this. And on top of that, where we are such a collective now, I think of institutions as far as all the user base and everything. I feel like we could probably find some willing participants who would be able to test things out among these institutions. Now, we've had really good luck, with CU Boulder and their accessibility lab helping us out with that. We would love to have more of that. Folio is a really huge project, and if we could get all ends of that tested, that would be pretty fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities here, and I think I do want to offer the mic perhaps to Damien, who's also here for the VuFind project, and of course Maccabee said he wanted to keep the conversation going, but I think there is an opportunity here because they're all web-based products. We have different backends. I know that the Stripes force is using React. We're using PHP. We don't really have. We're just starting to get kind of web components into our thing, into our view, our thing. But also, like you're doing a really sounds like a very thorough accessibility audit, and VuFind being the front end for that. There's going to be a lot of benefits there just from the report, and obviously that community has the developers with the know-how to help out with that. So I think there is a really good opportunity here to extend the knowledges outside of the projects and start to go to a foundation level thing. Does that go against what our opening talk today was going about? I hope not. I hope we're in category 3 of we all care about accessibility and not, will the cross app team become cross all of the different products kind of thing. I think that'd be beneficial. There's a lot of duplicated work, as it were, as far as stylings and different technology goes on the dev end. And we also want to make sure that developers, not only in-house, but those who have to customize, the tenants who have to customize and use the products, have the easiest experience as well. That if they know how to add a button to Folio, they know how to add a button to ReShare, they know how to add that same button to VuFind and have it work across the way. So I do think there's a lot of opportunities there. I think one thing that, as far as like the resources of the OLF could be useful for also is that VuFind hasn't really had. We have a wiki page that's fully voluntary. Of if you've installed VuFind, feel free to put your institution in a link here so that we can see how many people use VuFind. But we don't have a lot of good information about the actual usage, about version numbers and things like that. And it gets into lots of other accessibilities like data accessibility. There was a really fantastic project that I heard about a few years ago. I forget what it was called, but they packaged VuFind and like a hard drive of books as like a computer that you can send. So it didn't connect to a server. It was all together in one place. And that's really useful for like a local community. But if you only get 500 kilobytes of data, per month or per week, it's really hard. Like, how do you make, a page in VuFind, the search results might come in at 2 megabytes. So just keeping in mind those things and knowing what communities globally are using VuFind, I think would be a huge benefit for helping make all of the projects more accessible.
Yeah, okay, so I'll pass the mic out for questions for folks on the Zoom. If you want to either put a question in the chat or just say call on me, and then we'll see that because we have the chat up and we'll call on you. Well, I don't know if, I mean, raise hand would work in theory, but we can see the chat here, so I'm just going to bias towards that. I'll pass it to Damien first.
Thank you, everyone. So just to brainstorm a little further on the potential OLF role in accessibility, a couple of thoughts, really both about OLF focusing accessibility in a general way that could influence the behavior of all of its projects. You know, one thing is when VuFind joined the OLF, one of the things we had to do as a prerequisite for membership was have basically product governance in place. And the process of developing that governance was really beneficial to us. You know, it was good to do, as today's keynote highlighted the benefits of having governance. And I don't think it would be outrageous to add a requirement of some kind of an accessibility statement just to ensure that every project is thinking about this, because every project should be thinking about this. And also tied in with that is perhaps evaluating tooling. You know, we've already talked about the limitations of automated accessibility checking, but also the benefits of doing it in spite of those limitations. Is there a platform that OLF could subscribe to as an organization and share out to the projects, just as it already does for many things like Jira and Localize and other things? Because again, if the tooling is available, people will use it. If they use it, accessibility will improve.
I see Kate has a question.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm Kate Dybel from Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, the systems librarian, and been talking about accessibility in libraries for over 10 years now. So, and it's one of those where I will say this, like we just went live and, you know, back in June, still trying to do our like a bunch of VuFind fixes right now, which Maccabee, I'm going to be spamming you once you get back from this conference. And with all that, I will say one of the big reasons why I pushed for VuFind and FOLIO at PCOM is that I want to be able to actually directly contribute back to a large open source library effort in my accessibility knowledge and also help doing this. And a lot of what you've been saying is absolutely right. And I am doing my best to be able to have enough time to reinstate the accessibility SIG this year. But I will definitely be calling on a lot of people for this. And some of the things you have brought up are really good there. And particularly to be able to utilize what like advantage we have and be able to get testers and all that. And one thing I do want to just bring up is it's from more of the disability advocacy side of things. You do want to make sure that it's not, there's a challenge that happens for a lot of people with disabilities, particularly those who are techies. Yeah, and able to actually like really do good testing is that they also are always asked to do it. So it's sort of like the stereotype of women always being asked to be the secretary, and not every person with a disability wants to specialize in accessibility. So with that, there might be a good means for also supporting what I would call like an anonymous user bank, where like that feedback could be there, but not necessarily calling out any specific people. So that's just one idea that popped in my head. But a lot of what you're saying there, like higher level governance, those of you who know all that more, I like the idea. I don't know exactly what would be involved in going forward with that, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting things here. I thank you so much for putting this on. I would have loved to have joined you all in person, but I believe when the deadline for submissions and even deciding to attend WOLFcon was May, and we went live like June 4th.
Thank you so much for that, Kate. Kate is, as Chris said before, by far one of the most valuable people in all of our communities about, you know, raising these issues. And I learn every time Kate talks about this stuff. I was about to suggest almost the opposite of what Kate just said in terms of finding ways to recognize, to get this pool of people and be able to recognize them and support them publicly and thank them so their institutions know that their work is really valuable. And maybe that's still true, but to Kate's point, we should also find ways of taking that contribution, even if the recognition is the opposite of what's desired. So just being aware of both of those. Other folks who would like to comment or question?
My name is Claire Fehrenbach. This is more of a general accessibility question, so if you don't want to spend too much time on it, I totally understand. But I heard you say that filling out a VPAT was really time consuming. I was just wondering if you could describe a little bit about what the VPAT process is like from somebody filling it out. Yeah, you need the mic back.
Cool. You want to take that?
Yeah, certainly. I could probably even pull up the website that we used just for a little visual, but it was it was a long form survey of and it started with the single A WCAG criteria, and you went down and there was like, you can spell out, it wasn't necessarily yes or no, but you can kind of like spell out and give more explanation about what your compliance was. So if you were compliant, you could leave it blank if you wanted to, or go into more detail. But if you weren't, you could explain why, or maybe it gave you some more room for work in the future. But I think I can pull up and show you what that form looked like, and then I can show you what we wound up with for VuFind at the end of that. Things if someone doesn't mind vamping while I do that.
I'll tell you this much. I actually did not fill out ours personally. EBSCO didn't have somebody else fill out our VPAT after an audit that we had. And then we have our internal accessibility team go through, do edits, look at those criteria. The form in general does a pretty good job, I think, of giving status as far as, it supports this particular criteria or does not support or even partially support, I think is another thing that can be indicated there.
Is this thing on? Oh, sweet. Nope. Oh man. Oh, now I'm starting to wonder if this is if I'm in the wrong.
Well, I can see why you'd want a different form.
I'm in the wrong place. Oh, this is it. So this helps you narrow down what you have to fill out. So you pick out what parts make sense to you. So for example, the hardware is not necessarily a part that you would need for a VuFind project, which is a web hosted I'm just gonna find a way to get through quickly. I'm just gonna. Does that give me something? Yes, here we go. Please. Oops, someone is offering friendly advice.
It's Kate, of course. Thank you.
It is Kate. I'm just gonna try to get this button to work. Yes.
Let's just run Axe real quick, see what the accessibility is.
All right, well, I'm not finding exactly what I'm looking for here, but it was a tabbed interface that it had. You could switch from A to AA to AAA, and then it had the hardware, software parts of it. And then at any point you could save the files. You could pick up where you left off. And if I find what I'm looking for, I'm more than happy to share that or poke around a bit after the panel. This is what Kate Dybel sent. Looks like there's some useful international forms here. Let's see what one of these look like. I picked 508 because I'm assuming that that's the US section 08, section 508. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. Yeah, this is kind of what you get at the end of it, and each of these little the conformance level and the remarks and explanation is broken down by what it is. So it would ask you non-content, and then it has the full explanation of what that is. And then you can say, for the web, we're good. Electronic documents, we're good. Software, not applicable. Authoring tools, well, we're working on it, you know. And then you could put your own remarks and explanation. And this actually looks very similar to how what we wound up doing with VuFind. No, I don't want the AI answer. Although, just to see what it says. Okay, cool. I didn't want them slandering us. And then here is the VPAT that looks very similar, except we just narrowed it down to just the web part of it. I think just thinking from this talk, one thing is that this doesn't really capture is, you know, we say, you know, for example, use of color supports. Like we're really careful about our contrast and make sure that things are not only indicated with color, you have icons and text and things like that. But this doesn't capture if right now someone put a Jira ticket in and it's not working in one part of the software, or we have plans to make this even better in the future. So I think the VPAT is a good place to start, and it's like an official report, so it tells you what's here, but this doesn't necessarily give the community an idea of beyond what is known to be broken. That's why I wanted to make sure that things like this, known issue, the current CAPTCHA solution is not sufficiently accessible, something that we've taken a lot of steps to address, but I'm not sure if we're quite ready to change that to fully supports happiness. So someone might come in and this doesn't give them any context of check out this PR about the proof of work CAPTCHA, check out this PR. I think did you do there was an accessible CAPTCHA pull request. Maybe. He's done so much, he's not even sure. So this doesn't capture like, oh, for more information on the current state of the conversation, check out this link, this link, this link, this issue. So I think there's more that can be done here, but of course, that's a lot of manual wiki updating for someone to be doing.
Thank you, Chris. John, grab that back.
Not sharing the document. Did I fix that?
Well, maybe this actually ties directly into what I was about to say in our last 2 minutes here, which is just how can we keep the conversation going, you know, about the sort of cross-product accessibility conversations so we can find the right document, share it afterwards, and so forth. We have on Folio a sort of SIG that sort of exists on, you know, on ReShare. We're working on it, and on VuFind, you know, we have the VPAT. But what are some of the ways that we can keep this conversation going cross-product, you know, between the products and ask each other questions and try to supply each other with answers and potentially even figure out resources that we might have, whether it's people or tools, to share or thank in common or that sort of thing. And anyone who has suggestions on that.
We're gonna stay in touch, you know, that's for sure. Now I know you. We're not strangers anymore, that's for sure. And we can keep going and keep each other posted on our journeys, you know, and you know, that's not nothing, right? And definitely, as we mentioned, of refreshing the accessibility SIG, you know, I think that's something that's we got our work cut out for us, because you know, something would be better than what we currently have, which is a dormant SIG there.
I was about to say, Damien
Well, I wonder if we also need to think about at the OLF level having SIGs that go beyond a single project. I mean, we already have the discovery SIG for Folio, which spans discovery products and Folio itself, but I think accessibility is another one of those broad areas.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I will try to share the recording of this with our OLF friends and sort of those of us who are formerly part of OLF as well. We can raise that question and see if there are other network effects where we can make this work better. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I created a channel just for our discussion on this panel, but we could easily just rename that OLF accessibility and turn that into it. Yeah. Anyone can join the Slack, so that could be a good starting point, and we can go from there. All right, it's 5:40. Thank you so much, panel, and thank you, Kate, and thank you, Clara and Damien, and so forth. All right. Yes. Yes, Kate, good suggestion there. Thanks.